they're actually doing something really unique for their user acquisition, and we wanted to invite them to speak. Something I haven't seen outside of Europe, outside of Big Point. Be under
full screen mode?
Full screen mode.
There we go. So, when we were first contacted to be on the user acquisition panel, our response was, we don't know anything about user acquisition. Their response was, why do you still have a business after 4 years? Our response was, we cheat. So that's what I'm talking about today. So basically, well, a little about me first. I'm the CEO of Fifth Column Games. It's okay. I'm not good at that part of my job. But in my career, I've been an engineer, a designer, a producer, and a director at different companies across console, web, mobile, and PC. I've done all sorts of things, but as you can see, I'm still a developer. At Fifth Column, we've had a lot of different IPs, and we've only had probably 7 or 8 total shipped games, so 5 of them, or 4 of them, 5 of them, one of them is unannounced, are IPs, 4 of which are television. And then in the past, I've worked on some IPs, and my co-founders have also worked on a great number of them. So here there's some hockey, some MLB, Iron Man, etc. So we know our way around IP, but so do a lot of people. This is about specifically TV IP. So what's special about TV? Well, what's special is user acquisition. It's not like other IPs. There's some overlap, but the real big one is this slide right here. User acquisition from TV itself. First off, commercials are the king of user acquisition. For anyone who hasn't had a television commercial, I highly recommend it. You get a really good yield based on the current viewership of that show. It has very little to do with your application itself. It has very little to do with the brand. It has to do mainly with how many people are watching that episode. They're hard to get, they're expensive to create, but once you've got them in the system, they'll put them back on the air. But you are a second-class citizen, and that's an ongoing theme with this talk. You may get bumped at the last minute, so that just happens. You have no control over it. Also, they may also put you on at the last minute. That sometimes is worse. You have to be prepared for real server spikes, not like ones that they don't come out of anywhere else in the industry. I think when we launched Pawn Stars the game, we had no users, a couple thousand here and there for the first couple of weeks, and then we had 100,000 install in 2 minutes. So, yeah, my database slapped me in the face for that one. And I don't mean my DBA, I was the DBA, so the database itself. And a big part of the value of the commercial is talent. If you can get the talent, you're good. If you can't, you're still pretty good, but talent will probably double your output about.
You mean the people from the show?
Sorry, people from the show. They use the term so much, I forget that they're not as common. But yeah, the talent, the actors, the big names on the show. For Pawn Stars, we had one 3-second shot of Rick, the main guy, saying, like, "Pawn on," and then he started to laugh at the ridiculousness of what he had just said, and he cut his feed. So that's our claim to fame with that. Commercials are the biggest difference between this and anything else. To a lesser extent, lower thirds are nice. Lower thirds are the little things that slide up during your TV show and kind of get in the way, that annoy you. Some of them have sound, not often. They have a low yield based on viewership, but they're still not that easy to get your publisher to actually give you. But they're cheap to create, and once you get them, they'll put them on again and again. They still show lower thirds for the Pawn Stars game, and we're 4 years in. TV commercials, we get them occasionally, but we have to fight for everyone. Social media user acquisition, this is true with any IP, or anyone who has any social media at all. But the idea is TV shows tend to have more than most people. Twitter and Facebook, you get basically a low yield based on how well those particular things are doing. Followers, likes, etc. But they're easy to get. In fact, a lot of times when you make a game, this is part of the just assumption that you're going to get some tweets about it, and you're definitely going to get some Facebook posts, especially if you're making a game that has Facebook connectivity. So these are fine, but they're not that strong. Nothing compared to a commercial. But you do get those initial users in, and if you have a good product, you can get your numbers up to start, and everybody knows that that helps.
Is that a trend with Facebook?
What do you mean?
Like 4 years ago, has it gone down versus 4 years ago?
Not really. I mean, it's never been great. it's just, I mean, I'm comparing it, this is comparative, so it's okay, but it's nowhere near the kind of yield you get from a TV commercial or something like that.
But you're starting with games based on TV shows. That in itself is an amazing task and achievement.
Right, well, I mean, having, you know, once you have the deal, you've got yourself, this is a talk about what you do once you've got that, basically. The game would have to be actually based on the TV show for most of this stuff, for most of these points to be valid. Paid acquisition, you all know everything about that. When you're working with a TV company, because they have these early means, they generally do paid acquisition after you've already shown them analytics. There's no like pre-marketing spend or anything like that. And a lot of times it's handled by a department that you haven't spoken to yet. So it's kind of a coin flip whether or not you're even going to talk to the right people or you're going to get any movement on this at all. It's not the core model of TV games in general, but sometimes if you can get them, they can actually be pretty good because if they can target them right, the brand strength will really carry them. When you've got a TV brand, you've got a very focused, targeted group, and it's more targeted than almost anything else you run into. So you get very good placement if you can buy the right ads. And then the website and the other, like, obviously it depends on the situation. Some brands, some TVs have websites associated with them. Most don't. They just sort of have like, hey, A&E Networks Television. If you drop down from the drop-down list, you can find Top Shot, you can find Pawn Stars, but they don't really care about that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of traffic going through those pages. They'll usually put you on there, but it's barely worth talking about. So the real focus is television commercials. So the details on actually having a TV brand, and this is, you know, general to having branded IP, you know, but TV maybe a little more focused and pronounced. Most people have heard of TV shows, and the ones who recognize it and like that show almost are more likely to click on your thing. In fact, they're pretty likely. So when you are doing all your user acquisition, you have a really strong draw to those people. But your audience is also limited by that. Anybody who doesn't like the show or isn't interested in that show won't play your game, even if you've got a genre or a high-quality game that they want to play. So you're basically putting yourself inside of a Venn diagram, or you're niching, you're being niche, no matter what, but it's a big niche. Also, it carries with it a large number of additional expectations on the product. No one wants to break even with a TV game. That's a big loss to them. They're spending opportunity capital. They're either giving you exclusivity, or at the very least, they're saturating their brand. So they want to see real returns. We've had games sunset that made, you know, a couple $1,000s a day in profits, and they still got sunsetted because they're like, hey, this brand's really good. We want to not saturate. They also expect quality beyond the quality that's purely product focused. Quality isn't just engagement, it's also brand protection. So if you can make, it kind of goes both ways. If you make a game that's not profitable but it's high enough quality, sometimes they'll keep it around just because it helps focus the brand and improve it. So there's a lot of weird games that play. Also, politics are very pronounced, and you are not important to anyone. So as soon as politics steps on you, you're stepped on. I don't know how much time I have left because I have a really short talk. But if I have talk, I'll tell you a story about that. What's that?
I think you're, unless folks want to hear it in their Q&A.
Okay, well, I've got a Q&A thing, yeah. So we had a Duck Dynasty game, and if you all remember recently, Phil, one of the cast members, said some things he shouldn't have in an interview, some sort of bigoted media, and A&E said, hey, don't do that, we're kicking you off the show, and it started this negotiation. We had a game that we had made for A&E due to some lucky circumstance. We actually got a 50-50 profit share game that we made on our own dime, which is great for Duck Dynasty. It's like one of the biggest brands on cable television. Except when that happened, which happened after we had made the game, before they would put a commercial on the game, they cut all external advertising, including everything we did. So the game just got squashed. It basically was we were a casualty of war in that process because a guy on a show somewhere said something he shouldn't, and it raised a big stink. And no one even cared about us. I mean, we were such small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. And that kind of thing happens. That's an extreme case, but every day something will happen that changes, you know, the flow of the way you do business that's completely out of your control, and you can't even talk to the guy who knows the guy who has any power to do anything about it. So that's really all I got. I got it's a pretty short talk, and I've got time for question and answer. So go ahead.
I just want to know the process of getting these licenses, because I've been at a major video game company. We would go crazy trying to get licenses.
Well,
spend
that
a fortune on prototypes and everything just to try to get movie licenses or book licenses. Just nuts.
Well, like most things, it's luck and timing. It's for us. I can't really say how it's done in quotes. I can say how we did it. We established our first job in the industry. We got founded over a project like this that a separate developer dropped the ball on. So I don't know how they got it, probably through a friend type situation. But I was in the right place at the right time doing consulting work and picked up the contract. We built a relationship out of that success and then have been riding that relationship to get more of these things. I'm not sure how you would do it naturally. Also, from what I can tell over the last year or two, it's been getting harder and harder and harder. We have a lot of trouble finding new branded IP contracts, especially in television. Everyone's turning away from that and going for the, hey, we're going to sell our license to Zynga for a guarantee and a low piece at the back end. There's a lot of that going on and a lot less, paid or even rev share model stuff.
Any other questions?
How much of your, you touched on this Duck Dynasty, how much of your game is tied, because that's scripted reality, we know that, but yours is almost reality, because you're shifting the programming inside of your game, I would assume, to what is happening inside the show.
Sort of. We if you know the game, I can give you a quick kind of brief on the game. It's sort of it's a tycoon game, a little bit like Tiny Street, but each the buildings are themed after big episodes. So we had the ability to roll out a new building and release it as a content drop that was tied to an episode from the show, but the game was not dynamically changing based on the story of the show. That would be too expensive to sort of develop a game around for us. We're pretty small. So we were going with something a little bit more like, hey, we draw a new building, that building fits into the template of what buildings do, but it looks like, the world's largest duck call or something else. And then there's some custom character animations for when they interact with them.
Okay, awesome. Let's give Andrew a hand.